I'm very happy to be here. You know, I know that on this tough and difficult situation, I mean, organizing this kind of event is amazing. At least it helps us to, I don't know, to be in touch, you know, on this terrible moment. I mean, this is the good thing about the pandemic, that at least virtually we can, I mean, I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina, very far from you, but at least we have this opportunity to talk, to share at least 1 hour.
Right, that's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so today we're going to answer this question. You know, I receive this one every single week about the services. I mean, this is new, the cloud environment. You are saying that, hey, this is a service. You don't need to change the service SQL Service account password every, I don't know, 60 to 90 days. You say that you don't need to migrate. I mean, everything will be patched automatically. So, I mean, I receive this in a daily basis, believe me. So today I will try to answer that question. First of all, I will introduce myself. I am Gonzalo Bissio, as I said, from Buenos Aires, Argentina, working in Microsoft as a customer engineer since 1 month and a half, more or less. I am new here. You have my contact. Yes, I am a big Rocky Balboa's fan. I love football, as I said. Sorry, I put soccer because I don't know football, soccer, but at the end, you get the point. You have my contact, my Twitter, LinkedIn, or I mean, whenever you want to contact me. So if you have any question or you need any help, just feel free to reach out to me. Today, what we are going to cover. First of all, this is for you. So if you want to ask me any question, if you want to stop me because you don't understand anything, just feel free. I mean, if you want, you can click here, this yellow hand, if you want to ask any question, or if you want to write it on the chat, just feel free. I will see, or I have on the other monitor the chat. So feel free. This is for you. I am here at least to answer all of your questions. So that's it. Then this is the agenda. We are going to talk about a little bit this service. I mean, this is one of my favorite service. So we are going to talk about the introduction, something new, migrating, limitations, blah, 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 blah. So let's start. I think that you already saw before this. These are the options that you have on the Azure SQL family. If you want to choose a service instead of a VM, which is not infrastructure as a service, this is platform as a service. I think that you already saw this. I mean, if you want to quickly know the concept, we have Azure SQL Database, which is a single database where you can have a single database. You can't execute cross-database queries, among other stuff, but you will have the database that you need. You don't need to, I mean, once you go to Azure SQL Database, you don't need to migrate, you don't need to do, or you don't need to worry about backups or consistency. Everything will be handled by Microsoft, and you will be always on the latest version of the engine. Then you have Elastic Pool. Basically, you are paying for, let's say, I would say a container inside with some databases that share resources. For example, you have an entity called logical server, which will be between quotes your instance or your server. Inside you will have different databases, but the resources assigned to them will be per database, not per server. And if you have an Elastic Pool, that will be by Elastic Pool, meaning that if I have 10 databases, they will share the power or the resources that I assign to the pool. That will be great for, I mean, if you have multiple databases and they are not being used all the time, and you don't want to use serverless and you want to use or you want to share resources, that will be a great opportunity if you want to share resources like resource governance, which in quotes, let's say, the concept of. And then we have our beautiful managed instance. This is a new service. I would say the newest service. This is for relational databases. This is, I mean, created by Microsoft and supported by Microsoft. It's in GA since 3 to 4 years, not more. I think that, I mean, from my point of view, this came to light because there were some limitation in Azure SQL Database that bothers me, I would say. like cross-database queries, like jobs, like, I mean, hey, I want to migrate. How can I do that? Well, you can do with managed instance, you can do backup restore, and that's it. I'm going to show you that later, but I mean, migrate is very easy, you know. I will talk a little bit about more limitations or benefits that you can get from this. But let's start talking about the service itself. As I mentioned, I mean, cross-database queries, backup restore, SQL agent like jobs. I mean, you can have jobs. You can have, I would say, reporting services database. I mean, extending events, DMBs. I mean, it is exactly the same. Managed instance is built on the latest server version. I mean, what will be different? Well, the thing is, you need to make sure that every time that you backup and restore, it's like in on-premise. Once you backup and restore an older to a newer version, you need to change the compatibility level. Well, here it is the same. If you want to use the latest features, you need to change the compatibility level. But you don't need to worry about patching the instance. You don't need to worry about migrating to a new version. You don't need to worry about the backups. I mean, this is just your instance. You have your databases, your objects, link servers, replication. I mean, all of these features are supported. So, I mean, this is amazing, at least for me. Compatibility, honestly, it's 100% with on-premises. I mean, in SQL 2019, there was a decision on the product team that nothing will be removed, nothing will be deprecated from the code. So, I mean, here, if something is supported in on-premises, that will be supported in managed instance, except for a couple of things. But I mean, you can run always the data migration assistant in order to identify whether if you can move to managed instance or not. Security, one of my favorite things. Sorry, I say favorite a couple of times, but I mean, this is awesome. One of the, I would say, difficult things about security on the cloud is that everything is published on the internet. So the good thing for managed instance is that by default, the service is close to the internet. Behind bars, you have a VNet where you can configure the peer on which, I mean, on which service or which servers will connect, or who or from where. I mean, a person is going to connect, not from the internet. I mean, if you want to, you can do that, but I don't think that you want to. But I mean, think about the VNet concept of a subnet in a server. It is exactly the same, but in the cloud. So by default, the service will be close to the internet. So at least you can manage that, unless you want to configure a public endpoint that, I mean, anyone from internet will be able to connect. That will not be idea, but at least if you want to close, if you want to control who is going to connect to your service, you can do that. In Azure SQL Database, you can, but the problem is that you need to configure an additional service, which is called private link. That will be the only way to close the connection from the internet. But you need to do some stuff. You need to create an additional service. You need to create a DNS. But here, by default, it will be closed, which is honestly awesome. Authentication part, I mean, this is one of the things that I like to tell customer that, hey, be careful, because by default, Windows authentication, the one that we use in on-premises, our infrastructure as a service, if we move our Active Directory and domain controller to the cloud, that will not work. So you need to use Azure Active Directory always. If you want to use, obviously, Windows authentication, I would say. Obviously, you have SQL authentication as well by default, but if you want to use another mechanism, you need to use Azure Active Directory. So be careful, you know, I mean, once you migrate, you need to know that maybe you need to use something different, like managed identities, to connect to this service. So if you are thinking that, hey, I migrated and I click Windows authentication, I connect, and you say, hey, it is not supported. Well, yes, that is not supported. So just be careful and make sure that if you migrate, I mean, if you move the database and if you move your application or your service, you move everything and make sure that that service support Azure Active Directory. to use Azure Active Directory, you need the latest driver versions, OLEDB or DBC. Otherwise, that will not be supported. Also, be careful. The last one, starting December of this year, if you have a Management Studio version older than 18.6, Azure Active Directory will not work. So be careful with that. Try to have the latest version. Be careful. Because I mean, if you install the latest, you will have Azure Data Studio, you know, the noise that make on the communities, but at least you know. This is what I explained you before. In case that you want to control who is going to connect, you can do that. I'm going to show you later on the portal how to create it, etc., etc., etc. And we have two different options to choose. One is general purpose, and the other one is business critical. It is the same. I mean, here only the vCore model will work. In Azure SQL database, we have the famous DTUs, we have vCores. Here we will have only vCores, but I will show you the difference between them. I don't know if there is any question. I will make a quick stop. I am not seeing anything, any hand or any chat. Nothing?
No, not yet, but I'll keep an eye on the
awesome.
chat.
Thank you. Okay, so general purpose. I'm not going to read this one. I know that it's a tiny letter, but I mean, let me zoom it. You have some information here that I will leave here in case that you want to review it. The important thing is that, for example, there are a couple of things that you need to know. For example, this graph here. This is about the internal high availability. So here's the thing. Every time that you configure a service, you are not just configuring a VM. You are just configuring an entire software. For example, if you choose general purpose here, behind bars, you will have an internal HA, meaning that, hey, if something happened to one of the nodes, for example, hey, I am having my service on this particular node, and if something happened on that node, on the host or whatever, you have a redundant node that will come up in case that something happened. So you are covered, at least on general purpose, with this technology. I mean, if something happened, you know that you have an additional node automatically created and you don't need to worry about anything. One of the differences that, as the graph is mentioning, is that you are pointing to a remote storage. You are not having the storage directly attached to the service. That means that you can have a little latency. I will show you later how this works in business critical, but you need to know that you are pointing to a remote Azure storage account or premium storage. So you will have a, this is one of the difference between the different tiers. Then very important stuff is that, I mean, the maximum storage here is 8 terabytes. There is a private preview that you can extend to 16 terabytes. You need to contact the product team, but you can do that. The other difference is the 10 DB space on general purpose, depending on the number of vCores that you choose, that will be the 10 DB space assigned to this particular service. So be careful, you cannot add more 10 DB files, you cannot add more storage here. So before choosing the vCores, review this. Because if you don't have, I mean, too many vCores and you don't have the space that you need on 10 DB, I mean, you cannot move forward, so be careful. And the other one is about the IOPS. Here, on this particular service, the IOPS are tied to the database space. So let's say that your database is 1 gigabyte, you will get a number of IOPS. If your database, I mean, if you need more IOPS, you will have to increase the database size. So be careful, because you need to see how much storage you are going to allocate to the service, because the performance can be impacted as well. And that's it. I mean, that is general purpose. So let's go to business critical. One of the difference here, you have only 4 terabytes. You have less space. As we saw before, the internal HA is an availability group of 4 nodes. So here, yes, this is using the same technology. One of the questions can be, hey, can I use a secondary replica to make reads? The answer is yes. Will I pay more? The answer is no. You can run your queries on one of the secondary replicas. Everything is included. Let's say that you are connected to the primary, you want to run queries here. Yes, you can do that. You need to use the famous attributes on the connection string, the application intent read only, and that will be redirected directly on the secondary replica. Another question can be, hey, Gonzalo, okay, I mean, am I protected if something happened on the region? The answer is no, because everything here is built on the same region. I mean, we have different zones on the region. Yes, that is true. We have nodes on these different availability zones. But if something happened on the entire region, on the entire data center, my system will be down, unless I use another feature that I'm going to show you later. That is one of the differences. The other is the space. The third one is about the TempDB. Now the TempDB on business critical is tied to the entire storage assigned to the service. So we don't need to worry about the vCores and the TempDB here. And the storage is attached directly to each of the nodes. So do we have that latency that I mentioned before? The answer is no. We will have better IOPS. Here the IOPS are tied to the vCores, not to the database side. So, I mean, these are the difference. We talked about TempDB, we talked about IOPS, we talked about remote storage or local storage, we talked about internal HA, and based on that, obviously, the space, because, you know, once you hit the limit, that's it. You cannot extend that one, here at least. Very important thing, we are on the cloud. Cloud means space, means security, means performance. Everything has a cost. So, I mean, if you have, I mean, I know that it's very normal to hear that, oh, I mean, today I connect to the system and it was down because a huge query was running and it filled up the TempDB. Okay, that fill up the TempDB here means the entire service is down because the TempDB is tied to the storage assigned to the instance. So be careful. I mean, another thing that I want to mention is that if you are going to move from on-premises or from infrastructure as a service here, try to remove the old data, you know, try to review, hey, do I really need this data here? I know that it is 10-year-old, 5-year-old, and I don't really need to move that. Maybe I can export the data and save it in CSV files or JSON or I don't know, or whatever you want to save. But one of the good things is that before moving to this service, I will recommend to review first the data or the old data or the historical data. Or you can use partition here. I mean, if you want to use partition, you can do that. You can use compression, you can use column stores. I don't know, well, I am going to mention this, but I mean, it happened to me, but this little guy here, I mean, you cannot have more than one transaction log on the database. I mean, you know that this is not recommended. This will not help you at all because if you have 2 transaction log, you need to wait the first one to fill in to move to the other one. You will not be writing in parallel like TempDB data files, but just in case if you restore the database and it fails, this is because you have more than one transaction log. And that's it. We have the general purpose, we have the business critical, then you can choose. Always test, test, and test. Well, some differences that I already mentioned here. You have the link with all of the differences if you want to check it. Feel free, you have the link, and that's it. I'm going to send this to Dirk, and he will send it to you. Backups are automated. Yes, you don't need to worry about backups. We have different retention period. Retention period is okay. How long we are going to save the backups? In managed instance, you have up to 35 days. In case that you need to increase that 35 days because you have a legal requirement today, one of the news that I am going to share is that you can use the same thing that we are using in Azure Sql Database, which is in long-term backup retention, that you can save them up to 10 years in case that you need. Now it's in public preview here in managed instance, which is awesome. Can you check whether the backups are running? The answer is yes. You can use extended events or you can use SQL audits. Jovan Popovich has an amazing post about that. If you want to, I mean, if someone says, or I don't know, InfoSec or security team say, hey, are we having the backups? Yes or no? You can use that. Restore, well, some restore considerations. High availability, some internal that I already mentioned. Then you have auto failover group. This one, this guy that you are seeing here. I talked about the internal HA on the same region equals to same data center, if you don't know the region concept. For example, US East, US West, or no, North Europe or North Asia, that are regions. But if you want to protect your service against region outage, you can use this guy, which is auto failover group, which is an availability group, obvious. You can have a listener. Instead of configuring the read routing mechanism, here you are using a secondary listener, which is read-only listener. So if you want to make reads, you can use this listener. Otherwise, you can use the other listener. There is not, I mean, there are not too much to say about this. At least if you want to protect your system against region outages, you know that auto failover group exists. That's it. If you want to use, I know that many people love replication. Here only transactional works or snapshot, but I mean, I use it because someone needs to move some information from the cloud to on-premises. I mean, data sync will not work or it's not working today with managed instance, but at least you have replication. If you want to use it and you need to use it, it is here. And I am not seeing any question, not hands. Okay, awesome. Service broker, database mail, services that are supported. One of the good things about services is that, hey, I need to scale up because, I don't know, tomorrow or now I need more power. Can you do that? The answer is yes. Small note, a small thing that I want to mention. Building or creating this service will take between 3 to 6 hours. If you scale up or if you add more beacons, that will take the same time. That will be 3 to 6 hours of downtime. The answer is no, because we are creating in parallel the new environment, moving the data, and once this finishes, there will be a small downtime on the failover. But that will take time. So if you are having an issue and you add more beacons, that will take time. That will not be the magical solution right now, because that will take time. If you add more storage, that will take 5 to 10 minutes, not too much. So just be careful with that. But if you need to scale, you can do that. If you need, I can show you that. This is a feature in preview. Think about having multiple instances for development or for staging, and you don't want to pay for each of it. You can use what is called instance pools, where you have multiple managed instances, for example, for development, or for example, for different teams, but this is not for prod. You can pay only one and internally having multiple instances in case that you want to save money. Think about an elastic pool, the same concept, but in instances. It is the same concept. I would not say it's the same feature. It's the same concept that you are sharing resources among different entities. So here is the same. You are paying only one, but you are sharing internally. It is in preview. News. Today I'm going to show you the Azure Monitor with SQL Insights. It's a very beautiful monitoring tool. It is in preview. Something can change, blah, 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 blah. But at least you will see it today. Another thing, I mean, you know, migrating it's easier here. There is a new service, log replace service. But the beautiful thing is that log shipping is being used. I love log shipping. I mean, it helped me multiple times to do migrations. So, I mean, it will be used on these migration services where you can't use the database migration services and you want to have more control. Well, you can use this service. It is in preview. But at least here, you have what are the news, what is coming. Always you can visit Azure updates, and you can filter by this service, and you can see what are the latest things happening here. Migrations, well, here always it is the same. You know, if you want to move from, somewhere to manage instance, if you're moving from SQL Server, you can use the data migration assistant just to confirm that you can move to this service. It's a very beautiful service, the data migration assistance. But because at least it will show you quickly, hey, these are the things that will give you trouble. You can use also the DIA, which is the database experimentation assistant, which will take a photo of your workload, and that will impact on your system and see, hey, okay, will I have any problem? Oh, this will be awesome, or no, this query will be problematic, blah, 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 blah. But if you are coming from a different service, you can use the SQL Server Migration Assistant. And then just to move the database, you can use the Azure Database Migration Assistant service, sorry. And that's it. The Azure Database Migration Service will, if you are coming from SQL Server, it will execute a backup and move it to a storage account that you are going to say, hey, I want to use this storage account, and restore it from there, period. That's it. In case that you want to have a little migration window, you know, for those applications or those sites that say, hey, I need minimum downtime because this is very critical. I cannot afford, I don't know, a long downtime. Well, database migration service allows you to configure an online mode, which behind bars use, again, log shipping. I would say this. Come on, log shipping. Just to do the synchronization between on-premises or between IIS to this service. And the day that you want to do the cutover, you click cutover, boop, that's it, you're live. But honestly, migrate to this service, you know, it is easier than Azure SQL Database. I didn't find any better technology than doing backup restore. Honestly, to migrate to Azure SQL Database, you can use backpacks or you can move the data manually. If you use Azure, the database migration service, behind bars, it will create a backpack, move it to the storage account, restore it from there. If that is a big database, maybe it takes time. So maybe you need to do something else like using some tools to move it. But here it is just a backup restore, and that's it. Well, here the limitation on issues, blah, 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 some links that you can visit if you want. I will make the second stop here. Do you have any question or something?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But it's very interesting so far, I have to tell you. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yes, you know, I don't know, are you using Azure SQL Database, Managed Instance or something, the cloud itself? Other vendors, for example?
So personally, or in my company, we do not utilize Azure databases or managed instances right now. Okay. There are still a few questions which need to be answered. So for the regulatories, well, how can I tell it?
GPDR.
It's, yeah, one example, it's GPDR, GDPR, right? So where's my data hosted? Who can access it? All these general questions which come up, although those can be answered quite easily. But hey, it takes some time sometimes to convince your bosses, hey, we can go to the cloud and don't be afraid that our data will put somewhere else. It does not matter. The Azure data centers are safe. They are certified, so everything is good.
Yes, I know. On one of my former works, it was a company that makes audits, I would say, to governments, among other stuff. I will not say a name, but the name of the company has 2 letters only. You will know. We have some issues in Germany because there were some local regulations that say, hey, you can't move the data outside the country. So we will have to wait until Azure release the Germany region in order to move forward. So, I mean, I know what you are saying. It's very normal, you know, convince the bosses, but the most difficult thing is convince the regulators, you know, to say, hey, I mean, a third-party vendor will have my data. I mean, here we have some contracts that will protect against that thing, obviously, but I know that sometimes it's hard. I mean, I assume that you are using everything on premises, right?
Pardon?
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, I know. I don't know for the rest. If you're using it, no. I assume that Winfried tried to say that you are using HANA in Azure, right? I don't speak German, but I saw HANA in Azure.
They have HANA in Azure, right? That's
nice.
The information.
SAP HANA, yes, nice. Yes, that is a technology that I never touch. I know that it's very popular. So let's start with the demos. So here, this is the portal, in case that you don't know it. So here you can create the things. For our particular case, you can search for SQL Managed Instance, SQL Managed Instance here, or you can use here to all services and search for SQL Managed Instance. It is exactly the same. So here you will click New. Here we are going to choose our resource group, here a name, Dirk. Oh, sorry. So here we are going to choose where we want to put the service. One thing that I'm going to mention now about a benefit. Well, we can choose the vCores, we can choose the storage. As I mentioned, this can be increased if you need. And here, I mean, obviously, if we are using general purpose or business critical, here we have this little guy. Let me zoom it. Here. Oh, sorry. I mean, I'm terrible doing this. I know that, but nice. The Azure Hybrid benefit is a benefit that will save up to 45 to 50% of the cost of the service if you have software assurance. This is like moving your on-premises license. You will see here. I confirm. You will move, as you can see here, your license from on-premises to the cloud. I mean, first of all, here you will be paying by, I mean, what you are consuming, not licenses. But you have the discount because it will be virtually like moving your license from on-premises to the cloud. So if you have software assurance, you can enable this. If you didn't, I mean, do it as of now, you can do that. Absolutely. This will not provoke any downtime. So just feel free to do that. Here, another protection. This is about backups. You can have local backups, or you can, I like SQL Server more. Nice. You will see that now it's the same. I mean, here we have some things, some limitation, number of logins, some throughput limitation, like, hey, I mean, I am running a bulk insert, I am running index rebuild, something that it is consuming transaction log. There is a limit called log rate limit that we can talk about in another session. But I mean, here I found that at least I don't need to, I mean, yes, you have GMSA's account or MSA's account for SQL Server, where you don't need to worry about changing the password or rotating the password every 90 to, I don't know, to 60 days or whatever retention period you are using. But I would say the good thing is that I don't need to worry about migrating. You know, in big companies, I have the problem that I have versions from 28R2 to 2019, and we have different programs consuming a lot of time of DBAs on migrating or moving something to the new. And honestly, we found that moving to this service, we save a lot of time and effort and downtime. Avoiding that. That is one of the good things. I mean, I love SQL Server, obviously. I love working in on-premises, having on-premises or infrastructure as a service, it's the same. But you know, this is one of the cool benefits of at least avoiding that time to migrate to other version. As I mentioned before, we have different, I would say, ways to protect your service. One of the things is to having backups on different regions where you can restore them in case that something happened, or you can have locally and you have on the same region, and that's it. You click apply, then you need to use or to put which is the SA here. You can choose, I don't know, password, blah, 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 blah. Here, what I mentioned about the VNets, here by default, you will have a new VNets, or you can use an existing one built for managed instance. Also about TLS, here is the public endpoint that I mentioned before, in where you can say, hey, I want everyone to have access. So never do this. Because I mean, you can enable the public endpoint only for Azure services, but anyone inside Azure can connect, so be careful. TLS, I mean, if you need, I mean, let's say that you have a legacy application that it is not using TLS. Can you disable this here? The answer is yes, you can. Is it, I mean, recommended to do that? The answer is no. But if you need to, you can do that. Additional settings, if you need a different regulation for the instance, you can do that. Here we have the auto failover group that I mentioned. One of the amazing improvements here, this is in public preview as of now, but you can set a maintenance window just in case Microsoft need to restart the service or need to run anything on the host where this service is running. At least you can control that. Tags, these tags are being used for, I mean, I use them for example, to identify who is the owner of the service, to identify what is the cost collector, to identify the environment, etc., etc., etc. Review and create, boom, this will start. Depending on the size of the service, as I mentioned, this can take up between 3 to 6 hours, but once this finish, you will see this. This is on the portal. If you want to see it directly as a SQL server, you will see this. How can you connect? Well, first of all, make sure that you are using a latest version of Management Studio, or at least higher than 17.4. Otherwise, the connection will not work. How can you connect? Well, it's a SQL. So here you just need the host name. Where can I get this name? Well, here on the portal, you will see host. And here you will have the full name to connect. So you get this. Can you use Azure Active Directory? The answer is yes. The option is this one. If you are using multi-factor authentication, or here if you're not. Putting here your account at company.com, blah, 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 blah. So once you connect, you will see this one. So this one is on-prem, this one is in Azure. So, I mean, if you click properties, you will see the same. Obviously, you can't touch all of the things here. Can you modify, optimize for other workload? The answer is yes. Can you modify the cost threshold? Yes. Can you modify the max COP? Yes. You click OK, boom, that's it. You change everything. There will be on the improvements, I added that there will be a change soon for the max COP. So by default, you will have a fixed number instead of 0, but you have on the improvement page. Another thing, for example, I migrated this one. So here you will see that I forgot to change to 2019. Can you change the recovery model? The answer is no, because as I showed you before, on the different backups that are running here, that Microsoft between 5 to 10 minutes is executing a transaction log backup. So you can change this. Some other options can be changed as well. Or if you need to add more files and file groups to, for example, use partitioning, you can do that. It's allowed. And that's it. I mean, if you want to see, I don't know, your agent is here. As you can see, the job activity monitor, replication, extending events. For example, hey, Gonzalo, I want to move my database from on-prem or from IIS to managed instance. How can I do that? Well, it's simple. You will require a credential, which is also being used in on-premises. You need an storage account, which is an additional service that I wanted to, or I will show you here, which is this one, storage account, which is like, for example, you are moving things to, I don't know, to a folder, to a shared folder, or to, I don't know, a backup device or something. Well, this will be the same, but in the cloud. I have my container, which is migration, and here you will see that a backup will be created. Let me this right here. And just in case, let's use a new name. So I created my credential, my share access signature. I get that one from here. Here, share access signature. This will be like a temporal key to connect to this service. Once you finish, you click generate, and the system will generate one. Then you create the credential in on-premises, and then you run the backup. I already created. Once you run the backup, this will be directly here. And then you can create the same credential and you can restore it from there. And that's it. See, you create the credential. I mean, if you want to make sure that you have access to the storage account, you can restore the file list only in order to see what are the files inside my backup. And then, number one, let me change this little guy here. Run the restore, boom, that's it. And the restore will start and you will have your database and boom, that's it. Let me show you because I don't think that I have too much time. I wanted to show you this little guy here. I mean, monitoring is one of the important things in the cloud. Event management where you can create alerts. So as I mentioned, this will be in preview. This is Azure Monitor, which is the platform that use Azure to monitor all of the services. As you can see here, virtual machine, storage account, blah, 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 blah. So here we have this little guy, the SQL one, which is in preview. This one was released last month in March at the end. Here you will be able to monitor all the managed instances, Azure SQL database or VMs that you want. Here we will have some things for SQL or for managed instance in this case. For example, if you want to monitor CPU, I mean, here we will require some additional services like a VM in Linux, because by default this is using Telegraph, which is an open source tool that will work for this kind of monitoring thing. You will require log analytics, which will be the one saving the information. And you will require a key vault in order to save passwords in order to connect. you will be able to monitor. I mean, can you use Telegraph today for SQL Server? The answer is yes. You need to configure it, blah, 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 blah. But at least this one is in preview. I don't know when is or will be in GA, but at least now it's in preview where you can monitor your services. Today, I am monitoring only one, the one that I choose, but you can have multiple if you want to. You can monitor different part of the system, weights or database space, transaction. If you want to monitor some specific counter, you can search it here, the ones that are enabled for managed instance. And that's it. I mean, Gonzalo, I want to create alerts. Can I do that? The answer is yes, you can. Here, on this area here, you can create alerts that will impact all of the services that are being monitored. And here, you can use the alert templates. I mean, there are not too much. I mean, if you compare against SCOM management pack, you will not see the same number of templates or content, but at least, I mean, this is in preview. I mean, it's being updated all the time. But if you want, for example, to create a rule for monitoring CPU, you can do that. You can send emails, blah, blah, blah. And I have some stuff to review, but I think that I am done, right? I mean, I know that you need to.
Yeah. One question I have right now, is there any information on how expensive the Azure Monitor will be? It is probably won't be free of charge, I suppose.
This one is in preview, which is free as of now.
As of now, okay, yeah, but
because
once it's GA, then probably it will be charged by monitored VM dash service dash instance, whatever. Or
exactly. The thing is, I mean, okay, as of now, it's in preview. So you have in the middle log analytics, you have a VM in Linux, and you have a key vault because it is saving the password that it is being used to connect to each of the service. In the future, can change? The answer is yes. Maybe everything is built on automatically. You need to worry about anything, and you have a single cost. But as of now, it's in preview. So I mean, there will be some things that will change.
Yep. Okay.
Folks, any other question? I know that there will be other speakers, and I don't want to delay the test, or if you want to do a break or something. Nothing?
No, so no question from my side. Oh well, one question. Sure. Regarding it's a few minutes back when you created the managed instance, there's an option where you can tell the portal, yeah, I have my own license and I bring it to Azure. So once I use this option, I'm no longer allowed to use the same license in my on-prem environment, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you are not saying to the portal, hey, portal, I am using this single license to this single service. As long as you have software assurance, you are covered.
Okay, but still it is so that I can either use it in my, well, for example, I have a bare metal server, or I have maybe an ESXi server from VMware which is fully licensed, but once I want to move to Azure, it's either this side or the other side. I'm not allowed to run both. That's it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. But during a migration phase, I think it would be probably okay, or how will that work?
I mean, you can talk to your TAM or CSAM to say, hey, I am doing this migration. That will not be double charged, obviously, because I mean, you are using or you are moving from on-prem to Azure. So, I mean, I've been used this service in huge infrastructure on my former works. We have some on-premises, we have some IIS, and honestly, we enable it as long as we use Vickers by default. And we always talk to our CSAM saying, hey, we are doing this. Okay, awesome. We'll review this with the different licenses team in order to get the confirmation, and that's it.
Oh, cool. That's good to know. Because I often think that maybe some companies still don't have the idea once they want to move or have to move to Azure, how such things will work.
Yes, absolutely. You know, once the bill come, the problem stop.
Right.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for your time. It was a very interesting session, and I have to confess I will rewatch it because there was so many valuable information stuffed into these 45 up to 50 minutes right now. So yeah, I will rewatch it again, and it was great to have you here as a speaker. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, drop an email to me, and we can talk. Okay, folks, have a good one.
Stay in touch.
Bye-bye.
So thank you for your time and have a great weekend.